without any further hold-ups, thank you, everybody. And I will introduce to you now Maja Smrekar. Maja is an artist who I have watched closely for some time now. Maja's work has been established as, I would say it's, well, in fact, what I will do is I'm going to read you what it says about Maja's work rather than me paraphrasing. Maja's work has been established in the international art and science milieu, exploring technologically and scientifically rooted processes and materials in the fields of biotechnology, ethology, ecology, artificial intelligence, and so forth. Her practice has allowed her to lead strong collaborations in developing cross-conceptual productions, hybrid arts, performance, installations, site-specific public art, video and sound, as well as contributions to knowledge exchanged within lectures, talks and texts. I was very keen to include Maja in our course, as I was with Daisy, because both have wonderful practices which bring a lot to the discussions that exist at this nexus of the arts and ethology and humanities in relation to human and animal relationships. And so I'm very happy to be able to hand over to Maja to give her lecture for us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this lovely introduction, Louise. Hello to everybody. So yeah, this is one of my collaborators and dearest friends and teachers, Byron. I'm going to be talking about him also, about our collaboration. He's telling me to cool it off a little bit. So yeah, but I cannot cool it off, but you can go, yeah. So I'm going to tell him to relax, to lay down. Read it. So yeah, the other two are somewhere in the room and will probably make some noises. So yeah, well, I prepared a lecture when I talked with Anna and Louise when they invited me to contribute with my contents. We all agreed that it would be good to prepare a lecture where I present the projects, all of my projects, where I have been collaborating with dogs. I mean, there have been also some other projects where I've been collaborating with other animals, but I prepared the lecture where I'm going to present the projects where I've been collaborating with dogs, because I think they are just the most honestly, actually, those projects are showing my art. So shall we start, or yeah? Do you hear me okay?
Yes, yes we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start. Then I'll I need to share the screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I think it will go without problems now. So you see my Apple computer screen desktop, right?
Yes.
Okay, so here we go. Yeah, okay. Off we go. So, my artistic strategies explore the potentials of current technologically and scientifically rooted processes and materials, such as biotechnology, molecular biology, ecology, artificial intelligence, etc. While these disciplines serve as a point of departure for introducing methods on transforming, overlapping, and staging space-based concepts and micro-performative arts, I sometimes include dogs as collaborators in my cross-disciplinary projects. In today's lecture, I will be presenting to you some of those cases. Throughout my series of 6 projects titled Canine Anthropology, I have been challenging hybrid processes by questioning taxonomies of gender, race, class, culture, nation, and religion. By dwelling on the phenomenology of fear accompanied with biofascination and biophobia, the work used the coevolution between a human and a dog as a matrix to establish the empathical distance towards the other. The confrontation of the cultural or the natural other as something foreign is much often being mystified because it demands an effort to be understood. Canine topology examined the society's ability in enduring this kind of an effort. The first project, titled Ictse Canis, was formally presented as an interactive installation in 2014. It was displaying a high-performance liquid chromatography separation machine used in analytical chemistry to separate, identify, and quantify components in a specific mixture. It was run by pumps which pass a pressurized liquid solvent containing the sample mixture through a column. In our case, there were 2 columns filled with stationary gel, separation media, and platelets-rich plasma fractions. These contained some serotonin and have been isolated out of blood samples from me and from my dog companion, a Scottish border collie called Byron. After collecting serotonin fractions, we transformed these into the odor of Ictse Canis. As a juxtaposition to the laboratory, there was an immersed living environment, a spherical cave that suggested a paraphrase of living in caves at the beginning of the wolf-human relationship. The installation environment was covered in recycled wolf fur, where visitors were able to dwell. They could smell the odor released by the sensor-equipped respirator. Thereby, the visitors smelled the combined serotonin of me and Byron and experienced an initiation into the essence of the relationship between a human and a canine. The focus on serotonin was based on research into the parallel evolution between wolves, humans, and dogs. Several genes in dogs and humans have been evolving in parallel as adaptation to similar environments. Importantly, modern dogs have developed the ability to digest carbohydrates and starch in a way not shared by the wolf. Domestic dogs have multiple copies of the gene for the enzyme amylase, which helps them digest starch and carbohydrates. Early humans also developed this ability as they became more reliant on cereal crops for food, especially during the agricultural revolution. This is regarded as one of crucial steps in the early evolution and domestication of dogs. Since that time, humans have developed a lack in smell perception. This decreased with the development of culture that selected for behavioral skills in verbal, sound, and visual communication. At the same time, smell remained central in the dog's perception of the world. There is also a gene that has consequently mutated in humans and is the one that codes for the serotonin transporter called SLC6A4. Polymorphisms on this gene are one of the key molecular mechanisms for humans to be able to better tolerate the presence of others. The mutation is therefore one of the parameters that contributed to the beginning of human culture. Since the split between wolves and dogs occurred more than 30,000 years ago, it appears that humans and dogs have been taming each other for thousands of years. The next project was executed in a form of a performance as an outcome of a residency at Jacana Wildlife Studios in France in 2014. Focusing on wolf-human-dog relations, I was collaborating with a wolf called Yellowstone, two Czechoslovak wolf dogs called Charret and Unas, and 3 animal trainers. To prepare for the performance, I followed a strict process. I was first introduced to the animals in a cage by only walking through their territory without looking at them or interacting with them in any way. It was actually 5 of them at the beginning, but then as I will explain this process, then we decided that we are most compatible with these 3. Being relaxed was crucial. After about half an hour of bumping into my body and then running away, the female alpha wolf dog grabbed my hand with her muzzle and took me to the center of the pack. That way, she showed me that I was allowed to get down to their eye level. I was not allowed to ever look the alpha male into his eyes, though. At the same time, I needed to make the smaller wolf feel safe. In this way, both the 2 highest ranked wolf dogs and the lowest ranked wolf fully accepted me. That is how I was able to enter into their pack dynamics. Slowly, our insecurity decreased, which was crucial for the performance because the animals did not feel the need to run away from me anymore. During the performance, I lied on the floor with fat and starch coating my skin, which the wolves licked off my body. However, it was the bond we formed in our previous communication process during the residency that kept me relaxed and that kept them staying with me during the whole performance, more so than the food. The performance took place at the Bandit Maj Theatre in Bourges, during which a text was read by a voice off stage. It addressed the issue of my emotional memory, the one of living with many dogs in a family that was professionally involved in the fur and leather production business, as well as dog breeding. It was intertwined with contemporary interspecies communication theories. Other texts read during the performance included extracts from Joseph Beuys and Oleg Kulik. I juxtaposed my work to theirs, as was also shown in the performance title, I Hunt Nature and Culture Hunts Me. So I'm going to show you now the video documentation of this performance, which was executed 6 years ago, almost 6 years, yeah, it was executed 8 November 6 years ago. And it was a one-time performance, so this is the only video documentation that I have.
Beuys. Les animaux ont conservé un instinct naturel et une proximité avec la nature que les humains ont perdu. Pour moi, c'est l'idée du mot qui produit toutes les images. Elle constitue le signe clé pour toutes les formes de façonnage et d'organisation. Quand je parle dans un langage théorique, je cherche à provoquer les impulsions de ce pouvoir, le pouvoir de la compréhension totale du langage, qui est pour moi la compréhension spirituelle de l'évolution. Mais le langage ne doit pas être compris simplement en termes de discours et de mots. Il s'agit là de la compréhension actuelle et terriblement réduite du langage. qui d'ailleurs peut être mise en parallèle de la compréhension réduite de la politique et de l'économie. Au-delà du langage comme verbalisation se trouve un monde de sons et d'impulsions, un langage de sons primaires, sans contenu sémantique, mais chargé de niveaux complètement différents d'informations. Toute forme de vie parle un langage, mais estimé et ignoré. Kulik. Je ne peux plus garder le silence. Un homme est un animal avant tout. Ensuite, il y a un animal social, un animal politique, et ainsi de suite. Je suis un animal artistique. Et c'est pourquoi, chers spectateurs, j'ai besoin de votre engagement physique et psychologique pour donner du sens. Il y a toutes sortes d'autres connaissances en dehors du centre. Ah, si seulement on pouvait créer une nouvelle culture unie de la noosphère, une culture zoocentriste, une culture inclusive des sens et de la perception incarnée. Tout ce qui vit et respire, pas par des mots, pas par l'esthétique. Seule l'intime loi morale et la volonté pour agir sont requises pour entendre la voix muselée de la nature, et cela également en vous-même. Lettre d'amour de Suzanne Silas à Oleg Kulik. Un prince parmi les hommes, un homme parmi les chiens. Alors il ne s'agit pas du droit des animaux, mais peut-être de notre nature animale. Pas une métaphore pour être traité comme un chien. Les femmes sont traitées comme des chiens par la culture. Les minorités aussi, mais pas les hommes blancs. Vous vous approchez très près et votre visage est couvert de sueur. Ou peut-être s'agit-il d'eau que vous avez lapée dans votre bol? Maintenant, votre visage est à quelques centimètres du mien et vous êtes hargneux. Vous auriez un chien si près de vous, vous sentiriez son souffle chaud sur votre visage. Si vous étiez le Doberman de ma sœur avec ce type de comportement, j'aurais peur. Je ne garde pas les animaux des autres, mais je pourrais vous garder vous. Smrekar. La gestion totale de ma propre animalité est encore humaine. Me transcender en un animal humain est ce que je ressens comme un véritable épanouissement. Je n'ai pas de frère ou de sœur, je suis seul, je ne ressens aucune sécurité émotionnelle. Je veux me souvenir du temps où mes cauchemars étaient plus présents, jusqu'à ce qu'enfin tu te glisses doucement dans mon lit, soumis, bien que je sois ton esclave. Tu es ma béquille émotionnelle, ma machine à aimer. Nous composons une famille hybride, un cartel subversif. Nous sommes au-delà de la machine anthropologique de la division des espèces. Nous sommes chassés par ceux qui manquent de capacité de transfert. Notre relation est un lien de parenté. Je suis ta petite sœur. Quand ils me disent d'emmener ma famille au jardin d'enfants, je t'amène comme mon frère bien-aimé. Je ne t'occulte pas, même si j'ai 5 ans et qu'un professeur me dit sévèrement que le chien ne fait pas et ne fera jamais partie de la famille humaine. Nous nous ressentons et nous comprenons. Nous vivons dans un vaste décor de peau tannée d'animaux morts. Nous nous sentons bien dans le vaste potentiel des différentes formes d'explosion de la vie. Nous vivons l'implosion de cette possibilité dans la peur et la colère, le ressentiment et l'animalité. Cela sent la mort dans la fabrique de fourrure où nous nous sentons à notre aise, dans cette inquiétante étrangeté. Nous savons comment cela se terminera, mais nous voulons savoir quel sera le prix à payer. Je veux te garder en vie. Je veux garder le pouvoir de décider de la vie ou de la mort. Je veux que tu comprennes que ma malveillance n'est juste une stratégie pour gagner. Nous voulons le nom de celui qui ruine notre vie. Je veux que tu saches qu'être gentil est surfait. Je veux écrire mon secret dans ton ciel. J'aime te regarder perdre contrôle. Je veux que tes pattes et tes dents me déchirent comme cela, je saurai d'où tu viens. Cela nous excite de voir un porc se faire égorger. Cela nous permet d'être sentimentaux, tellement sentimentaux que nous devenons impatients de goûter sa peur lorsqu'il nous est servi au dîner. Nous transcendons la peur. Nous voulions assister à ces derniers soubresauts avant d'être éventrés. Nous voulons goûter la saveur de notre propre espèce. Nature-culture devient un seul mot. Nous voulons pouvoir contrôler nos capacités mutuelles. Je suis ton nutriment, comme tu es le mien. Quand je veux étrangler les étoiles pour tout ce qu'ils m'ont promis, je pleure sur toi, serrant ta douce fourrure. Et je veux que tu saches que mes blessures, je me les suis infligées à moi-même. Je veux me retrouver dans un bel endroit après ma mort, avec toi, car tu portes ma mémoire émotionnelle intime. Je veux que tu m'aides à comprendre quelle est la différence entre un enfant et un animal domestiqué. Suis-je un chien? Je veux être ton chien. Je veux arrêter de te détruire, mais je ne peux pas. Là est notre intimité. Et je veux. Et je veux. Et je veux. Et j'aurai toujours faim.
And I will always be hungry.
Okay. So the next project was titled Hybrid Family and followed a process of preparation in 112 days of seclusion. This started mid-October 2015 and lasted until the beginning of February 2016. The process included psychoendocrinological training, a diet of iron-rich food, and hydration by galactagogue liquids that promote lactation. Alongside, I prepared physiologically by using mechanical breast pumping 8 times per day, every 3 hours for 20 minutes. The breast pumping act carried the impulses to neuroendocrine cells of my hypothalamus through the nerve receptors in my breasts. Consequently, oxytocin, as a side effect, cause empathy, was released to be transported by blood to mammary glands, releasing the hormone prolactin, which stimulated milk production. Thereby, I executed the same strategy as some mothers-to-be, no matter regarding gender, who are about to adopt a still nursing baby. I was also decorating the space I was living in to transform it into a home, a humanized lair for myself, Byron, and new puppy, an Icelandic dog whom I called Ada. Colostrum started to occur after 8 weeks, right when I adopted her. In the public presentation, which took place in the form of prearranged visits in the studio at the Freies Museum Berlin, the visitors took the visitors could witness the feeding of a puppy with colostrum while drinking tea and discussing the reproductive freedom in a heteronormative society, as well as the anthropocentrism as its consequence. As a childless 37 years old, I was during the 3 months process drawn to think within the discourse of Donna Haraway. She poses the question, what is the colonial feminist reproductive freedom in a dangerously troubled multi-species world? I came to the conclusion that just because I don't have children, that doesn't mean I do not own strong maternal instincts. Those are a part of being human, not just a part of being female. However, the main question in the hybrid family remained of how to think about those concepts through a molecular perspective. Following this line of thought, it became clear to me that by being pregnant with a meaning, I was becoming the other as a mother. With that notion in mind, I was building a bridge towards the next and final project in the series, to the transcendent in the Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari sense of the word, beyond the Oedipal, as well as beyond the mythical animal, by creating myself into the third type, the demonic animal. In their book, titled 1,000 Plateaus, Capitalism and Schizophrenia, Deleuze and Guattari claim that it is only in the relationship to the demonic animal that a becoming animal can occur. Unlike the other two types, and like the process of becoming, the demonic animal has a molecular character. So, since becoming animal is a molecular process, this position therefore led me further into fusing my molecular material with that of the cultured version of the wild wolf, a dog. And this is how Artemis was born. The most obvious reason to give the project this title was connected with the ancient Greek goddess of hunt, wild animals, wilderness, virginity, and of childbirth. Some texts mention that Artemis would always bring 7 of her 13 dogs hunting. The ancient Greek author Homer refers to her as Artemis of the wildland, mistress of animals. The meaning of the name is connected to the pre-Greek monstrous deity, which was identical with the great mother of nature. But ART, or art, is also short for assisted reproductive technology that mainly belongs to the field of reproductive endocrinology and infertility, and may also include intracytoplasmic sperm injection and cryopreservation. My attempt was to question the current biotechnological possibilities from which the impossibility of the mythological human wolf figure emerges in all its poetics. The human wolf figure can be found in all human cultures as the ultimate other. Since the establishment of humanism, it has been a symbol of the human exclusion out of nature into the culture opposition. With humanism, nature became the other, and humans stepped on the top of the trophic level to dominate all living organisms. The concept for the Artemis contained a further observation on our zeitgeist, what we might call the thanatopolitical dimension of contemporary biopolitical practices. These are the challenges that call for new ecologies. In the face of disappearing natural resources and the increasing demand for them, the global migration flows, overpopulation, and consequently threats to biodiversity, all evoked by a globalized capitalism that seems to pursue its path of destruction until everything is consumed, I tried to explore in Artemis the arts of living on a damaged planet and the possibility of life in these capitalist ruins. I was further dwelling on the myth of humanity, which has been based on universal values and our exceptionalism, always excluding some that didn't correspond to the ideal, which underlies the apparent. There have always been fine gradations within the category of the human according to gender, race, class, culture, nation, religion, species, and so on. Therefore, not all of us can say with any degree of certainty that we have always been human or that we are only that. By dwelling on problems of our current social ecology, I was trying to initiate a debate on what conventional law-based ethical phrases such as human dignity even mean in contemporary society. In Biotehna, a laboratory for artistic research of living systems in Ljubljana, within the regulated biotechnological protocols, a team of collaborators and I juxtaposed contemporary biotechnological abilities next to the mythologies on humans and animals. We enucleated my extracted reproductive cell, left it under a UVC light, and then by electroporation fused Ada's somatic cell with the leftover membrane. Since a reproductive cell programs the nucleus to divide, after 7 divisions, the aggregate of 128 cells, on the 6th day, a blastocyst occurs. Artemis has been left to divide just up to the stage before the formation of a blastocyst. The cell was then frozen to a -198 degrees Celsius after a 3rd day of growth, with the nutrition and hormone feeding stopped, and therefore stayed frozen in time. Despite the fact that the project carried some biotechnological potentials, it at the same time primarily served as a civil tactical media act, meaning that even though it exists frozen in liquid nitrogen, it also evokes a public discourse and serves as a reference to the theory of Rosi Braidotti, who requires us to think beyond humanist limitations in order to embrace the risks that becoming other than human will bring in the future. And ecologically, Artemis connects 3 carnivorous species, human, dog, and wolf, where the last 2 are genetically 99.9% identical. Ever since the beginning of our existence, all 3 species have been regulating the environment together, although the wolf is now an endangered species and therefore nihilistically absent from the formal dimension of this project. On the other hand, humans and dogs became the largest invasive species on the planet. Therefore, I symbolically placed our cell materials back to an equal cohabitating relationship. The final installation was conceived through the form of a dog stacker and served as the central visual reference that framed the final presentation of the whole canine topology opus. Dog Stacker is a training tool designed for dog breeders or handlers as an aid for correctly stacking their show prospect puppies and young adult dogs. The project series was thereby shown formally supported by the ultimate tool for a dog show competition. The installation juxtaposed the atmosphere of the 4 projects with elements of my personal mythology and further intertwined them with fragments of biotechnological facts and tools shown as a radical possibility of the canine and the human worlds colliding. An incubator with a microscope, firstly used in the Artemis installation display, was now placed at the end of the final canine topology dog stacker. It was synonymous with scientific research, but instead of rendering everything more precise in order to adjust the view with all its dominance and interest, the lens of the microscope that enabled the viewer to see a hybrid cell transformed the molecular sculpture into a hallucinatory imagery of a parallel time, where perception of reality became a reality. One of the jewelry boxes in the dog stacker installation represented the hybrid family project. The box showed a juxtaposition of a body tool that can cause a hormonal consequence. On the one side, there are breast pumps displayed as guns, as a weapon which I use to subjugate my body, but at the same time, it is a weapon which symbolically enabled me to resist the neoliberal misogynist system that rules the whole Umwelt as we know it, down to our every last subatomic particle. The other jewelry box depicts the gold, copper, and silver kitschy illustration of a SLC6A4 gene and serves as an over-identification symbol of the oversimplification and fetishization of scientific facts. I also composed a final document of the series, an artist book, as a visual map of the process, put onto another smaller stacker. Without any text, the book served as a non-verbal homage to the optocentric culture human animals have been developing as a consequence of the parallel evolution with dogs. It showed parts of the process with photos of my parents, dog breeders, that began before my birth. And it composed into a mosaic that immersed the viewer into a story that built a kind of a speculative fabulation composed of still pictures. It was as if the form of a memory album could serve as a glimpse into the past, but one that reflected a memory of the post-human future. Here, the dog-human werewolf existed as a reminiscence of an extinct culture of man. In 2018, the dog-human paradigm transformed into the next artwork, titled Opus et Domus. The project stemmed out of a feedback to populist-triggered reactions in the global social media, and the yellow press turned into negative virality based on biased misinterpretations of the artworks, especially Hybrid Family and Artemis. I included my hybrid family in the Opus et Domus by producing yarn from Byron's Adas and my own body hair that I collected, spun into a social fabric that was defined by our hybrid relationship. Throughout the durational performance, I was engaged into the production of threads on a heavy metal spinning wheel placed in a glass house. The service gesture of turning the spinning wheel involving my entire body was displayed as an objectivization of female body as a means of production. This has been increasingly apparent in the time of populism, in which the significance of the nation increases, placing great value on birth rate. Through such social regression, the female body has often been again seen as property of the state, law, and ideology. This is why I reverted to this obsolete form of production in the performance. The advanced technology, a spinning wheel operating the lever for microfluidic laboratory equipment containing Byron's and my serotonin drops in order to slowly evaporate on a hot plate attached to the outside front wall of the glass house, was serving to underline the contrast to this symptom. The archetypal hybrid relationship depicted in this tableau vivant thus paraphrased Frans de Waal's conclusion that the roots of politics are older than humanity, a thought suggesting that nowadays hybrid processes in society are solely political statements. In 2019, I was invited to compose an artwork that includes artificial intelligence, and I decided to implement my collaboration with dogs also into this challenging context. While the research took place during 2019, the project was formally executed in 2020, while we have all been struggling with understanding the coordinates of the new actuality in regards to social and personal paradoxes that were revealed by the Corona era. By addressing technology as a means to interrogate the moment of COVID-19 pandemics, I departed from the fact that the technology, which as the mere brute force always works in the service of political power and social control, also stems from hierarchical categorization of natural beings and bodies. And so, on the one hand, the non-brute force project, as I consequently decided to call it, represented the canine and human bodies as reduced abstractions within total corporate knowledge and control of bodily functions. But on the other hand, the project suggested possible paths of resistance by imagining the human with animal coexistence in a state of joint physical activity. This dichotomy opened questions such as how much the ownership of the body and the self are possible through augmented reality with its principles of uncertainty. How much potential there is in data science for co-building subjectivity. By trying to answer any of the mentioned questions, I first needed to establish the ontological differences between the three entities, human, dog, and artificial intelligence. This part of my project was inspired by Oksana Timofeyeva's studies, especially her book titled The History of Animals, A Philosophy, where she claims that, quote, humans try to overcome the abyss which opened with the end of the classical human figure in the 20th century, precisely through the use of technology, unquote. What I would add is that humans have thereby reprogrammed themselves, which has in contemporaneity been manifested especially through artificial intelligence, which is, while lacking its own subjectivity, set up as a mirror of our subjectivity. Artificial intelligence is a projection of our growing desire to process ever-increasing amounts of data, through which we attempt to preserve a certain order of things. That way, we strengthen the system, which is the source of power, to biopolitics. As a point of departure in my research, I carried out an introductory photo performance with an industrial robotic arm interacting with a dog, a Belgian Malinois called Che, whereby the robotic arm as technological labor force signified the expansion of the human arm, while in this relationship I understood Che as an important collaborator in the production of freedom. My conclusion was inspired by the following thought from Timofeyeva, quote, through the emancipation of human from the grip of biopolitics, the precondition of which is the absolution of the animal from anthropogenesis, we can address the retroactive emancipation of the animal, which is constituted through the process of the historicization of human. In this process, it was not only the human that was built by excluding the animal, but it was also the animal that was built by constituting the human. And precisely through this process, the animal created its own history, unquote. I was further posing a question. If the robotic arm as a symbol for a human techno-fantasy of control is aligned with my own body, if I keep the dog as a collaborator to whom I wish to approach through subjectivity, and since artificial intelligence lacks subjectivity, how should this signifying combination attain a meaning in the project non-brute force? My answer was, in reading human history through the historical potential of the dog on the basis of a selective pressure which is not anthropomorphic. The latter is based on a previous research into the on my previous research into the parallel evolution between humans and dogs. The historical reality of a dog as the fellow carrier of the bioindication mentioned already at the beginning of this lecture has been constituted through the activity of human physiology, especially in the SLC6A4 gene mutation. Therefore, it is in this framework that the connection between human and dog is constituted through the human body. The dog, thereby, is not only one of the co-creators of human history, but also of human physiology. These reflections led me to decide to shape the formal center of the project as a serotonin molecule. Together with the dog, we would move around the installation in the continued logic of repetition to which we would be bound. Furthermore, aided by artificial intelligence, I would attempt or would desire to meet with the dog. But here, the human desire is not disrupted by the impossible closeness of things, but by the very space where those things could be met. Therefore, the meeting would occur in the physiological space. The non-brute force installation that resembled an orthogonally abstracted serotonin molecule-shaped grid served us as a platform for feeding our neural network algorithm by executing numerous iterations, and at the same time as a stage for gathering breathing and heartbeat data that are also influenced by the effects of serotonin. During preparations for the iterations in the studio, my canine team, composed of 2 professional dog trainers and 5 dogs, have been along with me establishing the processes for training dogs' physicality, while I was at the same time initiating a deeper relationship with my canine collaborators, Ada, Boo, and George, who have been proving us to be most suitable ones for this collaboration. Since we have been needing to execute many iterations, climbing up and down, the dogs needed to execute training for their joints. By improving the strength in dogs' front end, rear end, and core musculature, we made sure that they could provide support to their joints and connective tissues at decelerations, landings, and when changing directions in performance, in order to avoid any risk for potential injuries in those regions. We have been therefore meeting with the canine team since the second half of May until the beginning of September, about 3 to 4 times a week for 3 reasons: to train the algorithm, to strengthen the bond between me and the dogs, and to train ourselves with the dogs in order to successfully execute the embodiment of our data. Public performances took place for 10 days in a city gallery in Ljubljana in September, where I climbed several times every day with each dog through the serotonin-shaped grid composed of plates and empty spaces. Each new iteration started when I pressed train on the AI's front-end interface platform that ran on the computer to command the neural network to process the last layout parameters combined with all the rest of the previous layouts. After its finished training, the random layout generated started offering different combinations to the neural network. The latter chose the combination that has been estimated to be the most optimal for me in order to align my heartbeat with that of a dog during the climb. The generated layout visualizer became my map, displayed on a smartphone attached to my arm, and served as my navigation tool during the construction of plates on the grid. This was the setup for a beginning of each new climb, throughout which I built ever new combinations of 32 plates and 41 empty spaces as inputs for the neural network, and at the same time as stairs for the dog to follow. What I actually did from the perspective of our AI was composing pixels in the form of plates on the recommendation of the network's output based on the parameters of physiology of me and the dog. During the climb, 2 smartphone apps collected our data from the electrocardiograph diagnostic variables used for the medical monitoring of chronic heart and respiratory conditions that the dogs and I wore. These discretely designed, off-the-shelf components measured our heart rate, skin temperature, and respiratory rate. While the variables sent data real-time to the cloud for a classification output, the dog and I invested our bodily forces during all the iterations, while it was to the dog's physiological rhythm that I was made to adapt through this whole action. During the public presentation, our activity could be openly observed by the public offered to scan a QR code with their smartphones in order to display the non-brute force interactive interface where the entire system and its flow were visualized within the web-based application. The app allowed a public observation of the real-time biometric data, the data stored in the cloud, the classification, and the process of generation of new layouts. The interface therefore offered an opportunity to bring forward the invisibility of our physiological activity that got revealed by displaying configuration of connections that the AI system established along with me and the dog. The interface also showed that despite the fact that me and the dog have been reduced to the digital online status, virtual space became the ideal place for building a hybrid physiology through our delta heart rate. By using wearables in the project as necessary tools to translate our physiology data to the cloud, I consequently started focusing on the future of market-driven diagnostic wearables and AI-based health monitoring technologies. Wearable technology that exists in close tension with identity, intimacy, and privacy has been accelerated in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Taken to the broader public, it has created new opportunities for the market to combine with healthcare systems in the near future, where it is going to enable better personal monitoring of population health on a grand scale. Because of the private API of Apple Health, it was not possible for us to run the biometrics data calculation and feed the AI in our app. We therefore established an artistic intervention in digital public sphere by building our own API and the non-brute force cloud where data gathered at the same time. That way, we were subverting the copyright of wearables in the project through a body hack, since data gathered from the dog's body got routinely processed within the Apple cloud and therefore presented an ongoing disruption of the corporate statistics of human health. Such action allowed me to focus attention on wearables that as devices for controlling public and private bodies, which are even being produced for pets, correspond to the politics of alienation, while the future of health augmentation therefore opens questions such as how will standardization in health communication protocols be put into place? How will the privacy and security concerns be addressed? Who will make those decisions and who will own our health data and who will have access to it? So before I conclude my artist talk, I'm going to show you a video documentation. It's 9 to 10 minutes long, a video documentation of one iteration that we did with the dog, with my dog Ada, by climbing the grid. On the other side, you will see the online app, which is real-time receiving and classifying all the data and also recommending me the map, which I then, by which I then compose ever new paths as stairs for the dog to follow me. So, okay, let's look at this. So, in conclusion, machine learning in its core utilizes the hierarchical constructions that find its origins in the beginning of Western philosophical thinking, whose implications lay at the very essence of the nature-culture division. Departing from these methods that have been created with objective affirmation and positivist enforcement, I wanted to disperse the concept of machine learning's hierarchical relations and structures of power by applying them to approach introspection, corporeality, and affection. For even though it seems that with data science we are facing a new sovereignty of truth that has nothing to do with bodies, it is precisely this condition that should evoke biopolitics to address the handling of cybernetic control to life itself, because science and technology are always political. They have always usually marshaled into the service of political power and social control. But if we interfere with engineering DIY way, we can change it. And if we can change it, we can try to control it, and therefore to control our bodies and our lives. In non-brute force, I was therefore not using AI as a distributor of creativity, but rather as a tool to utilize and augment my vision of physiological hybridity with the non-human. The project was not about positivistic dualistic outcomes, whether and or how many times I succeed to align my heartbeat with that of a dog. Instead, it was about offering a sense of possibilities that, as a point of search for new ways of articulating the future, suggests a discourse on AI for being employed as a civil society's tool of unification instead of being utilized only as a corporation-owned tool of division and control. And this is the frame within which the dog became my co-executive collaborator in the attempt to achieve at least some idea of freedom. As I try to address the nature of human and non-human relationships in our contemporary society through my art practice, I hope the aspects of my research would add an engaging perspective to you, as I hope they would concurrently offer inspiration for further examination of how this kind of artistic outputs evolve in our increasingly digital, global, and uncertain world, in order to discuss their potential impact on the audiences of the present and of the future. I believe encouraging such mobilization is especially imperative in the zeitgeist that evokes erosion of trust in the ever more developing global context of disaster capitalism. And with this positive thoughts, I conclude my lecture.